the ancient roots before Odùduwà. Contrary to the popular belief that Yoruba history begins with Odùduwà, Professor Akintoye reveals something deeper. The Yoruba existed long before any dynasty. It traces their roots back to the voltage Niger cultural complex, a prehistory network of people that developed in what is now southern Nigeria, Togo and Benin. These groups spoke related language and began to form permanent settlements thousands of years ago. Well, before the first millennium BC. By the 4th and 5th century CE, this community had begun to take on clear Yoruba characteristics in their culture, ritual and political structures. This early Yoruba society was not primitive. They built shrines, worked iron, traded across regions, and created social system. Professor Akintoye used archaeological finds like stone tools, pottery, and burial mud to prove that civilization was already flourished in this area. The myth of Odùduwà wasn't a beginning. It was a political shift. A new dynasty, yes, but not the birth of a people. Scene 3. The rise of Ilé-Ifẹ, art of Yoruba. At the center of early Yoruba civilization stood Ilé-Ifẹ, not just a city, but a spiritual axis. By the 18th century CE, Ife had become a hub of urban sophistication, with planned roads, sacred groves, and artisan guides. Between the 12th century and 14th century, Ilé-Ifẹ entered what historians now call a golden age. This was when its artists created astonished bronze and terracotta head, work of such refinement that Europe scholars once falsely claimed they couldn't be African. But Professor Akintoye insists these works are Yoruba masterpieces. They reflect a society that valued divine kingship, cosmic balance, and ancestral honors. Ife influence extended far beyond religion. It became the political and symbolic center of emerging Yoruba kingdoms. And while Odùduwà may have helped consolidate these powers, he arrived into a world already rich with meaning. The true genius of the Yoruba wasn't just spiritual. It was scientific, architectural, and philosophical. Scene 4. Myth versus history, blended with wisdom. Many ask, if the story of Odùduwà is a myth, does that mean it's false? Not at all. Professor Akintoye urges us to see myths not as lies, but as memory shaped in poetry form. The tales of Odùduwà descending from heaven or arriving from the east reflect the deep truth about migration, transformation, and the reordering of power. In Yoruba culture, myth and history are two lenses viewing the same event. The challenge is to decode them, not dismiss them. Odùduwà became the symbol of kingship not because he invented Yoruba, but because he recognized and unified a people who already had their roots in the land. Scene 5. Akintoye method and mission. So how does Professor Akintoye tell his story? He doesn't rely on one source. He blended oral tradition, linguistic analysis, archaeology, and even early Arabic and European writing. He criticized and cross-examined this source, but never threw away the African voice. This method allowed him to separate symbol from substance, and restore what was lost, the true depth of Yoruba origin. He reminds us that history isn't just a school subject, it's a weapon, a shield, a mirror, a road back home. In this first chapter, we've seen how Yoruba history didn't begin with conquest. It began with memory, with ancestors who built, who taught, and who told stories that still echo in shrines and songs today. But this is just the beginning. In the next episode, we follow the rise of Odùduwà, not as a creator but as a unifier, and trace how his descendants spread across Yoruba land, building empires that would challenge kings and colonizers alike. This is not just history, this is remembrance. Kindly subscribe, like, and hone the notification button. Thank you. Welcome back. Have you watched episode 1? If you haven't, kindly do to understand where we are. Episode 2, title Odùduwà, unifier of king, not creator of the Yoruba, the most misunderstood name in Yoruba history. Who was Odùduwà? A god? A king? A myth? A warrior from the east? For centuries, Yoruba oral tradition placed him at the center of everything, the first to step onto sacred ground at Ilé-Ifẹ, the father of kings, the links between heavens and earth. But Professor S.A. Akintoye offers a bold interpretation. Odùduwà was not the beginning of the Yoruba people, but the beginning of Yoruba statehood. In this episode, we explore the truth behind the legend, the real rise of Odùduwà, and how his arrival transformed Ilé-Ifẹ from a sacred city into the spiritual and political capital of the civilization. Episode 2, Scene 1. Before the arrival, the Ife of the ancestors. Before Odùduwà set foot in Ilé-Ifẹ, the land was not empty. It was already inhabited by people Akintoye called the Aboriginal Yoruba. Settled farmers, artists, priests, and elders who had lived there for centuries. They worshipped Olódùmarè and honored Ọbàtálá, the deity of creation and order. Ilé-Ifẹ was already a spiritual center, a sacred town with cosmic significance. The myth that Odùduwà founded Ife comes from a symbolic retelling of political takeover. In truth, Odùduwà came into an existing system, bringing new energy, a new alliance, and a new power. Conflict and negotiation followed. The old order, led by Ọbàtálá and the priesthood, resisted. But ultimately, through either military strength or strategic diplomacy, Odùduwà rose as the new head, not of a people, but of their new government. This moment wasn't the birth of the Yoruba, but the birth of a monarchy. Episode 2, Scene 2. Odùduwà, the statesman, the founder of kingship. Once in power, Odùduwà didn't destroy the tradition he found. He recognized them. He preserved the sacred groves, honored the Orisha, and kept Ilé-Ifẹ as the exit of creation. But he introduced royalty, a system where kings, known as Oba, ruled with divine backing. Odùduwà rule became a model. His children and followers spread out from Ife to establish new kingdoms, each tied back to the sacred center. These include the Aláàfin of Ọ̀yọ́, the Ọọ̀ni of Ifẹ̀, the Olú of Ìjẹ̀bú, and others, each claiming descendants from Odùduwà royal house. Akintoye described this as the cultural unification of the Yoruba. Note their creation, a federation of kingdom, each distinct but spiritually bounded. This royal lineage became the basis of political identity, tying towns and tribes into one cultural whole. The children of Odùduwà, but not necessarily the people created by him. Episode 2, Scene 3. Truths in the myth. Was Odùduwà a migrant warrior? Yoruba oral tradition often describe Odùduwà as coming from east, sometimes linked to Mecca, Egypt, or a mystical land called Okeorun, use of heaven. Akintoye doesn't dismiss this story. Instead, he interprets from a symbolic memories of migration, possibly from northern Nigeria, Nupe land, or beyond the Niger. He may have been a warrior leader or a migrant group, bringing military skills, political structure, and a new cultural element into Ife. The fusion of this incoming group with the native priestly elite created a powerful blend of spiritual legitimacy and political strength. Odùduwà Rises wasn't just conquest, it was synthesis, a new order born of old roots. This explains why Yoruba's myths say it descended from heaven, not because it was divine, but because its arrival changed everything. Episode 2, Scene 4. The expansion, the birth of civilization. After Odùduwà's death, his children and loyal chiefs didn't stay in Ife. They spread out, founding kingdoms in every direction. This migration birthed the dynasty of Ọ̀yọ́, Ketu, Ìjẹ̀bú, Ìjẹ̀ṣà, Ṣàbí, and more. Each new king claimed origin from Ilé-Ifẹ and inherited a blend of Yoruba religion, custom, and political order. What began as a single rulership in Ife became an interconnected network of kingdoms. Trade routes were established, political alliances formed, wars were fought, but under a shared identity. Odùduwà's greatest legacy wasn't a war or religion, it was a structure. He gave the Yoruba world a center from which everything else could grow. Ilé-Ifẹ remained the holy city. The Ọọ̀ni, its ruler, was never just a king, but a living symbol of cultural origin. So who was Odùduwà really? Not a god, not the first Yoruba, but a leader whose arrival transformed a people into a nation. A united myth with power. He wove spirituality into government, and his children carried his legacy across forests, rivers, and hills, laying the groundwork for one African greatest civilization. In our next episode, we will follow one of those children, Ọ̀rànmíyàn, founder of both Ọ̀yọ́ and Benin, and a warrior whose shadow still falls across West African history. This is more than a story. This is identity reborn. Kindly smash the subscribe button if you are here for the first time. Like and on the notification